Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Deconstructed Christianity. I am your host, Coach Renz, and welcome to Thursday. It is Thursday, right? Yes, Thursday. It's Thursday. Welcome to the Thursday broadcast. Plan on having a good show today. Plan on having a good time today. We'll see how it goes. But I want to welcome everybody onto the podcast. This channel called Deconstructing Christianity, where we deconstruct from Christianity, where I've deconstructed Christianity, and now it's my charge to help other people deconstruct from this religion by providing factual information and not getting into baseless arguments about how people feel and their feelings. It's not about your feelings. This is about information, pure and simple. What's up, Dwayne? How you doing? So we are on YouTube and Facebook right there, TikTok over here. So we're all here. What up, Ben? How you doing? I'll try to give a few minutes to let people get on before we have our discussion. Today's discussion is going to be about the Tower of Babel, how it's a lie, it's impossible, and it's just a narcissistic, and it's narcissistic in nature. And as I've said many times before, the story, if Genesis cannot stand, then the whole Bible falls apart. Because through Genesis, through the Torah, you have your establishment of Judaism. Without Judaism, you can't have Christianity. Without Judaism being true, you can't have Jesus. Without that, without Jesus, you can't have Christianity. So at the end of the day, if any of these stories, any of these ideas fall apart, then a sane person would let go of the whole damn religion. And we're an intelligent person. But of course, we got people who believe in this religion that are not intelligent, not sane. Well, let me rephrase. They're intelligent. Some of them are intelligent. But I question their sanity. I have to question their sanity. To just go off and believe in these fairy tales, and even when you know they're not true, to still hold on to them because of your fear of going to hell is an amazing thing to me, that you fear this hell and fear your God so much that you refuse to think through the process, understand that you're being fed a bunch of fairy tales that you've been indoctrinated into, and you still want to continue to believe in this religion. But hey, I'll let that be as it be. So right before we get started onto the, just let me break down the way that this podcast goes. Number one, I only talk to one person at a time when I do allow people to come on. Number two, the first 15 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you what this podcast is about as far as the subject matter, what the subject matter is about, breaking down the subject matter. Number three, you cannot overtalk me. And we will stick to the subject matter for the most part. So that's pretty much the rules of engagement. One person at a time. When we do get to when I open the doors of the church, it's one person at a time. Beyond that, no. Yeah. So, well, let's get to it. Oh, so the Tower of Babel. I know there's only a few people on here right now, but this Tower of Babel story is one of those stories that I've always found problematic. I always found the Tower of Babel problematic simply because the story in itself sounded implausible even when I was a child. The story didn't make sense as far as the nature of God even when I was a child. There is no time frame that the story seemed like it was true, even from when I was a child. And then as I got older, I recognized how this story of the Tower of Babel is impossible. And not only impossible, but it is a borrowed story. It is not a borrowed story. It is the made up story from being in Babylonian captivity and people just making shit up. Right? So if you're unaware, the story of the Tower of Babel is found in Genesis. I believe it's somewhere around Genesis 11 or somewhere around in there. It's after the flood. So supposedly after the flood, the children of Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their 3 wives grew to such a number that they were able to build a city. And when they built this city, everybody spoke the same language. Now, there's problems within that right off the bat because it speaks about some of the other children, the other children's children already having their own language. But let's say that part about them having their own language is an afterthought of what happens after the Tower of Babel story. But the story says that everybody spoke the same language, and because everybody spoke the same language, everybody was able to cooperate with each other. So the story would indicate that cooperations between humans only can happen if we all speak the same language. And this is meant to be taken literally because they speak a literal language. They talk about the literal language that they're speaking. And that the number of them had grown so great that they was able to build a city. And within this city, they decided they was going to build a tower to the heavens, a tower based on the show that they were very, the way the church teaches it, prideful in their city. Pride is not always a bad thing. Pride is most of the time pride most of the time is a good thing. You know, I'm proud of my son, proud of my wife, proud of my daughters, proud of my whatever. You know, go on and on with that. You know, proud of the workout the other day. Pride is not a bad thing. So they were showing the pride of their city, and this God saw them building it and thought that whatever, if man can build this and we allow them to continue to build this, then they can do anything. What's stopping them from accomplishing anything, right? So they built this tower, and then this God comes down. He doesn't like it. So he confuses the language. And then after confusing the language, the people all scatter. They go from being able to work together to all of a sudden they scatter, and they to all the 4 corners of the earth. The people all scatter. Now we know today there's a lot of problems with this story. And this story, even in our modern day, doesn't make sense. They built this ziggurat. God had a problem with that. He ain't got a problem with the big ass building down there in Dubai. He ain't got a problem with the Empire State. He ain't have a problem with the Eiffel Tower. He ain't got a problem. You go downtown to the Western Hotel. He ain't got a problem with the Western Hotel. He ain't got a problem with the Bank of America. He ain't got a problem with the MetLife building or the Prudential building. He ain't got a problem with none of these other tall ass buildings the man has built throughout these centuries. But he had a problem with the Tower of Babel. And one of the first things that you have to recognize is that we call it the Tower of Babel. In the Hebrew, of course, Babel means confusion. But it becomes problematic when you look at the fact that in the Babylonian, Babel means gateway of the, well, Babylon means gateway of the gods, right? So Babel in Babylonian means gateway. While they were under Babylonian captivity, the Hebrew people took and confused the words because they say Babel, they say Babel, and they look similar, sound similar. So they took their words of gateway and turned it into confusion, to mean confusion. So first off, it's just a mistranslation. And then when they mistranslated it, they looked at unfinished, most likely unfinished ziggurats, or ziggurats that had fallen in disrepair. And seeing these ziggurats created this story, since the ziggurats hadn't been completed or have fallen into disrepair. And they said, oh, this is why. On their way out of Babylon, let me tell you why that ziggurat's not, why it's all messed up. Because this is where the language came from. You know, it sounds like a grandpa story. You know, when you just telling some lies to the little kids. Well, boy, I'm gonna tell you, the reason why let me tell you why that tower over there don't look right. See, long time ago. Remember I told you about the flood the other time? Long time ago. Well, soon after the flood, you know, generations go by and everything, and then people all working together. See, it's a grandpa story. He just be making stuff up. It's when you sitting on your grandfather's knee and he just making up some damn lies to explain something, and he really doesn't know the truth. But the truth of the matter is, ziggurats began to be built during the time frame of the Sumerian and Akkadian Empire. Most likely, the first ziggurats was probably built during the time frame of Sargon. Sargon instituted this process. So you got Sumerians, you got Akkadians, and then Assyrians, and then Babylonians. So this is passed down through people. The city of Babylon has been a city that people have lived in for thousands of years. So of course there's construction, deconstruction, construction, deconstruction. That is a constant within those communities over those thousands of years. And oftentimes, sometimes shit just get left to disrepair and never get fixed and just is an eyesore. But ziggurats are originally created for multiple purposes. Purpose number one, bar none, was that they believed that the gods lived on the mountains, or the closest you, or the higher you up on the mountain, then you're able to communicate with God. This is why when you read your Genesis story, when you read your Exodus story, Moses is going to the top of the mountain. Every time when you want to talk to God, you go to the top of the mountain. Go on the top of the hill. It's always going up to some mountain. This was a common motif throughout ancient history of you got to go to the high mountain. So, but if you ever been to Iraq, you will know there ain't a lot of mountains everywhere that you go. Not a lot of mountains, right? So they built ziggurats because they look like mountains. Priests would go to the top of the ziggurats and they would give their praise to their gods. Whatever the city god is, the city-state god is, they would give their praise and prayer to. So they was built for that. They was also built with throne rooms for the gods, because just as the Bible talks about the God needed the Ark of the Covenant to dwell in, needed his tent of meetings to dwell in, it needed the temple to dwell in. This got everybody at that time frame believed their gods needed places to live, rent control. So ziggurats were built as apartments for their gods. Now, they also utilized they were things that gave the people pride about their city. In the same way, a lot of cities add Ferris wheels. They build tall buildings or certain monumental buildings and to be proud of. You go to New York. I've never been in New York City. I've been in the airport. I've been at the hotel next to the airport for 14 days, but I've never been in New York City. But you always hear people talking about, oh, there's Central Park. Oh, there's Chrysler Building. There's the Empire State Building. People are pride. They have pride about their city, and oftentimes building constructions is what people are proud of. What they point out. You go to St. Louis. Oh, look at our arch. Hey, it's those kinds of mentality. So this mentality that we have today about that is the same as those people had about when they built their ziggurats. So when they have built them, where have you been? I've been on here, dude, every day at noon. Where you been? So anyway, they built these ziggurats. These were also like symbols of pride for the city. They also used to store grain in them and use them in storage houses as well. So ziggurats had multiple purposes of use. And like I said, you find that same mentality within the Bible when it comes to going with them looking like. So these ziggurats have been being built, and you can imagine that over thousands of years, some of them are going to go in disarray. So when they see them go in disarray, the Israelites, when they're captives in Assyria, when they're in places like Nineveh, and then they're captives in Babylon, then they see that there are some that are great, and then there are others, they the hood. So the Israelites, on their way out, after they were freed by the Persians, they start making stuff up. They make up stories. They make up lies about what those ziggurats mean. And the story of the Tower of Babel is one of them, and the story just simply don't fit. Number one, let me knock these out real quick. Number one, that's why the story just plain out lie, because it never happened, because they can't even get the word right. Like I said, Babel in the Babylonian language means gateway. They took that to mean confusion and made up a story about languages. Number two, there were already languages all around the world, all around the planet, by the time frame this story of the Tower of Babel was happening. So the Noah's flood supposedly happened around 2500 BCE. In 2500 BCE, we already had the Kemetic people and their language. You already had the Assyrians and their language. You had Hittites and their language. You had Greeks and their language. You had the what we call Chinese today and their language. All right. You said the sound is skipping. So is my word still? Who's hearing me choppy on Facebook or YouTube? Your stream is choppy. Video and audio is clippy. Really? Ah, hell. You mean I've been saying all that? Okay, so let me know if it's still that way. Let me see if I can make some changes here. Check everything. Well, the microphone volume is fine. Echo reduction. Audio choppy, video good is what I'm hearing here. Okay, is this better on the audio? Is the audio better now? Facebook, TikTok, Facebook and YouTube. All right, good. I saw it switched my microphone for some strange reason. So we should be good. We good. All right. Well, I'm not starting over, damn it. So where was I? Yes, so time frame. This story supposedly is happening around 2500 to 2600 BCE. All right. We already know that there were many languages around the world being spoken from 2500 to 2600 BCE. So at no time frame was the whole world speaking one language, and that's never happened, period. There's never been a time frame where the whole world spoke one language, but most certainly not in 25 to 2600 BCE, which is the time frame of the story. It's just not happening, right? And then the time frame in itself, right? Oh, I love the little people when they come and say, "Cause you were there." Yeah, and you were too, to verify. See how that works both ways? See how that works both ways? You believe in something, but you weren't there. But we have archaeology, and we know that there were civilizations in existence in and around 2500 to 2600 BCE, and that they all have their own languages. They all have their own way of writing. A lot of them were still using pictograph styles of writings at that time frame. So we all know that the story in itself is a lie when it says that everybody around the world was speaking the same language. Now, also, the story is impossible because if you look at the genealogy of the biblical narrative from Noah, his sons, Shem, and all them from Shem, you will see that the three couples at max could have only produced about 200 people in that 100-year time frame. At the population would have only been about 200 people during that time frame. And even if people would live in 300 years, but they're not, because he said that the number of men would be 120. But they were, so they had their lifetime, and I'm giving them like modern day health numbers, not even the numbers that we know that infant mortality was at a much higher rate back then. We are giving them modern day bullshit. And yet, there could only have been about 200 people. 200 people does not the city of Babylon make. 200 people are not building the city of Babylon. 200 people are not building the remains of the ziggurats that we do see today. 200 people are not building the remains of the ziggurats that we still see today. That's not happening. So the sheer number is impossible. Doesn't work at all, right? So it is not. Now, what does this say about this God? This God claims that he is not the author of confusion. Yet, when he saw that man was working together, which is what you would think this God would want, instead of man being at war, instead of man fighting one another, taking advantage of one another, fighting over resources, you have a situation that, according to this book, y'all keep saying it's glitchy. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. YouTube and Facebook, y'all hold on TikTok. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna stop this stream. I'm gonna start it over. Okay, we're gonna stop this one. Start it over. So let's end this one. We're gonna stop it. Go get your Bible.